Welcome to Picks with the Professor, the podcast where a real statistics professor
And the SpongeBob to his Patrick, Jake.
gives you sports betting tips. I am Professor Sides. You can follow me and find all my picks on Twitter at Professor Sides. You can follow my friend Jake on Twitter at myfriend_Jake. Today is Thursday, February 10th, 2022, and this episode covers today's best college basketball bets. In case you're new here, I built a mathematical model that predicts what the spread and total should be for every Division I college basketball game. And information along with a graded A, B, or C pick for each of today's games is available in the Google Sheet that is linked in the show's description. A picks are the ones I love, B picks are the ones I like, and C picks are the leans. However, please remember that good and bad variance will occur, so as much as I'd like to say the model will be profitable each and every day, that is an impossible reality for any gambler. Jake, the model, gangbusters Monday, Tuesday, a little bit less so last night, gave back some of that profit. I thought it was interesting. It doesn't always happen this way, but this week, each night has been kind of a microcosm of the way the model has gone, right?
Yeah.
Great Monday, great Tuesday, and then yesterday, 2 and 3 for me in the game breakdowns with 2 one-bucket losses. And that was kind of how the night went, right? We had some good luck earlier in the week, which boosted the profits. You gotta love that. And then kind of some bad luck last week. That kind of happens. That's going to balance out. Tech's offense, though, was to me the biggest shock of the night. Just no-showed. And they like to play low scoring. They're known for their defense, but their defense didn't play great. Their offense didn't show up. Like, that was just shocking to me.
Yeah. That's the trouble with this team. They're sloppy. They had 19 turnovers, and that's not like an aberration. That's kind of within range how they normally play. It's just they normally get some turnovers going and get the other team to play sloppy. Well, Oklahoma kept their head, and even though Tanner Groves, who he said would have to carry him, scored 2 points and played 12 minutes. Gibson went nuts, had 8 threes, scored 30 points. Goldwire had a decent game. The younger Groves played decent too. So it was just very impressive what Oklahoma did to this Texas Tech team. And
if you told me all those things happened for OU's offense, I would have said, oh, that over's golden. The over falls like 2 points short or something. But yeah, with all those guys scoring like that, I would have said, oh, for sure that over happens. And like you said, Groves just they actually everybody else plays well when he's not around. I mean, hats off to OU for that performance, right?
That's a big for him. That was
huge win.
That might keep him in the tourney.
Absolutely. That's going to be huge come Selection Sunday for sure.
And then, Houston last night, man, I watched the first half. I was like, okay, this one's probably in the bag. Started watching Ohio State Rutgers. All of a sudden, check the score, and SMU was – so I start looking into what happened. The short bench finally caught up to them, those injuries. They've got that short bench, and then they got some foul trouble that would totally change the game. They couldn't play the pressure defense they like to play. They had to sit back in the zone, and that just took them out of all offensive rhythm. I think they went on a 7 or 8 minute stretch without making a field goal, and that's when SMU made their run. And it sucks for Houston, but I hope that's not what's going to happen to this team going forward. I hope they can kind of stay out of foul trouble, but that's something to watch out for when you're looking for betting. Is, hey, if any bit of foul trouble happens, this team goes way into a shell and can't handle it.
Yeah, and it hasn't affected them so far this season, and it hasn't really affected them covering. The only times they haven't covered in this stretch of, with this new look Houston team, was when they were favored by 19 and they'd kind of toy around with the team, and, they didn't seem to care. And you kind of know what you're getting in those situations. Otherwise, it hasn't affected them until last night. So it kind of does show you that they do still have that weakness, and it's not like we can just count on them to win. That matters, of course, if you're looking forward to March, because that's probably a one-bid league right now. So if they don't win that tournament, that's going to affect the bubble. So just something to take note of there with Houston. It hasn't affected them against the weaker teams, but against a good team, that the combo of a good team on the road, foul trouble, short bench, like I always talk about right on the show, you like multiple ways to win, and you want to have a play that you look at and you say, it's really only one way this loses. That happened with Houston last night, right? We kind of said there's only one way it loses, and all those things happen, and that happened, and that's fine. Those are in the long run. If we're making plays like that, we'll be successful. So, interesting game there. Before we get to today's slate, reminder: please like and subscribe, follow, right? We appreciate all of those things. They help us out greatly. Also, just a quick note: we are interested in providing you the best content possible. We want to be entertaining, informative, interesting. Most importantly, Sure, but most importantly, we want to of course provide winners. So we're playing around with the formatting at the extra picks at the end. Drop a comment. Let us know what you like or what you don't know. What you don't like. We want to give the people what they want. So we got a couple of tweaks that we're changing around with that for today. Again, just let us know what you like, what you don't. We just want to provide you with the best content possible. We got 4 games we're going to break down before we get to that segment. We're going to start off with 8 p.m. Eastern, 7 p.m. Central, Morehead State at Belmont. 2 really good teams here. Belmont, being at home, a 10-point favorite. The model says the total should be 143. So I locked in under 144 and a half. It's under 144 right now. As long as we can avoid one of those weird late game endings. We saw this last night with Xavier. I don't know if any of y'all saw the Xavier game last night. There were 12 points, I believe, in the final 25 seconds, barely tips that over. As long as we can avoid that, I like the under a lot in this spot. So as long as it's not just that perfect combination of fouls, if it's a tight game, which it could be, Morehead State's a very good team. If it's a tight game, I think the possessions will slow down in that second half. I think this number is too high. If Belmont blows them out, possible. Belmont could easily be up by 15 with 5 minutes to go. The game slows down. So a lot of ways that this game goes under. So I think that's your smart play. As with regards to the spread, Jake, is Belmont going to be able to cover the 10?
I've got them covering the 10. This is a very important game for both these teams. Morehead won the first matchup in Kentucky, so coming here to Belmont, to Nashville, Tennessee, Belmont needs it because you don't want to see Murray State before the championship, right? Because this is probably a one-bid league, and if you want anything can happen in one game, you want that to be in the championship where you dethrone Murray State. So both teams are very motivated because they're second and third right now, and Belmont is 5-3 and 1 against the spread at home. They are an incredible offense. They rank 8th, which is just behind Duke when it comes to offensive efficiency. They're 5th in effective field goal percentage, and they don't turn the ball over. So at home, I expect all those things to be at their top end with all the smaller players playing a lot better. But they've got 2 guys, and Brzezinski and I can't remember the other guy's name, that are averaging. Oh, no, I got it. Ben Shepherd, that are averaging like well above 15 points and just carrying the load offensively. Just very, very good. And this Morehead State team is 1-6 when they've been a dog on the road, and because they're very dependent on Broom, who is an incredible player. They just don't have the guards around him to help out. Because he's I think 5th in the nation in double doubles, averaging 16 and 10. They just don't have enough around him, and I think the terrible free throw shooting they have, hitting around 68%, is kind of the difference in why it gets it from like that 7 range to a 10 range. They miss a couple free throws. Belmont gets a bucket at the end of the bucket or 2 towards the end of the game, and that pushes it up to like 10, 12 kind of range.
All right. And then at that same time slot, another game that I think will be really interesting. So two games to kind of flip back and forth between real big conference implications. Grand Canyon at Utah Valley, still at that 7 p.m. Central time slot. This one's around a pick'em. Utah Valley, a slight favorite here right now. It's at 1. This one is fascinating to me. The model makes this total 129.5, so around 130. I took over yesterday on a B pick of 128. So if you follow along on Twitter, if you follow in the Google Sheet, and you locked in that over, you're at an interesting position with the total up to 132.5 this morning. I think that this is a great example of why I provide all of the numbers, because depending on what the movement is, you can kind of play this either way. I stand by that number of 130. I said, if you're looking, if you had 128, I like the over. I think that's just not enough points. But at 132.5, if you're looking at it this morning, later in the day, if the number's still that high, I think now you look under. So that doesn't necessarily mean I think you play both, right? That's depending on your philosophy. Some people can get great value like that, and you just want to let the value ride. Some people will try for that middle. That's up to you. Just a note of that's, again, why I provide the exact number in the Google Sheet for all the games and sides and totals, because with the way this number's moved, yesterday I was saying over, now at 132.5, I think that's too many points. So of course it depends on what number you get. I think 130 is about the right spot for this game. Jake, with regards to who wins, who you got for this one?
Man, I'm leaning Grand Canyon. They are. I'm not very comfortable in this pick, but they are a very very good defensive team. They only allow like opponents that shoot 25.1% from three, which is best in the nation. They're 15th overall in defensive efficiency, and they've got Blackshear Jr., who is just an incredible player. He averages 17. He leads in points, steals, and assists. So he's the key to this team. If he's off, then tonight, then it's a Utah Valley's game because they're very similar metric wise, like offensively, but they're just a little like both teams are dependent on that one guy. Like Blackshear Jr. is like Grand Canyon is very dependent on him, and Utah Valley is very dependent on Fadraz Amik. Not really sure how to pronounce his name. Great player, but he's a big guy. So when it comes to these small teams, I lean towards the guards because guards are more important because you got to be able to get the ball up the floor, especially in these defensive games with teams that force like turnovers like both these guys do. You don't want to give extra possessions, and it's hard to get your center to bring the ball up the floor also. So that's kind of I lean Grand Canyon because of that.
Okay. Okay. All right. Yeah. Two interesting games there. Take note if you are looking back, if you dive into this game and you look back historically here for how these teams have performed this season, I think it is of note the WAC road trips can be pretty brutal. They're really spread out across the country. You've got, Seattle, teams in Seattle, you've got teams down in Arizona, you've got teams out in Texas. So some of these road trips can be the home court advantage can go up a little bit there just because of the road travel. This one a little bit less so. Grand Canyon, Utah Valley is going to be a much shorter of a trip than some of these other teams have to make. So just something to keep your eye on if you are looking back how these teams have done home and road wise. The WAC road trips are just brutal. You got that part of the country, right? It's just so spread out. At 9 p.m. Eastern, 8 p.m. Central, Arizona is a 6-point road favorite at Washington State. I've got an over pick for you here. I like an over 143. It's 143 and a half right now. The model thinks 145. This one's an interesting one. Arizona has been an over team this year. They have a great defense, but their offense, of course, is fantastic. Washington State's been a bit of an under team, so a little bit of a clash of the way they want to play this game. I'm kind of just trusting the process here. I think that Arizona, being the better team, is going to be more able to control the game and do what they want to do. They want to play at a little bit of a faster tempo than Washington State. So I like the over here. Jake, can Arizona cover the 6 tonight on the road?
Yeah, I believe they do. But don't sleep on this Washington State team. They are a top 60 offense. They hit their free throws, and they're very underrated defensively, and they force a bunch of turnovers. And because they rank 18th in defensive efficiency, so don't sleep on them. Don't count this game against them. I think Arizona gets it done. They're just the overall more talented team, as we've talked about, like Ben Mathurin and all those big 7-footers they rotate in. They're just very very good, and I really like this Washington State team. So I think they're going to make some noise later in the year. But I think Arizona gets them tonight just because they are just more talented, like just at every position, and like I even think Arizona's coach is better. But
Even a
I don't
talent on the
think it's
sidelines.
I think it's like I think it ends up being close to a 10-point game, and like Arizona just walks it out through the end and slows and has Washington State struggling a little bit because of how good they are defensively.
Yep, Arizona obviously a really good team, so that makes a lot of sense there. Which leads us to our game of the night, same time slot, 9 p.m. Eastern, 8 p.m. Central. Purdue is a short 3.5 road favorite at Michigan. Another game where the total has moved a lot. This time the opposite direction of what I've picked. It blows my mind. I cannot explain this at all. I locked in over 149.5. My model makes this 152. Now the total's down to 145.5. I don't know if this is a false move. I don't know if this is some funny money coming in, driving the under, and then now some sharps are going to come in and bury that over. I don't know. I cannot even comprehend how you would take under in this slot. If you've been with us for any time, we've talked about this Purdue over for weeks now. I've been riding them to a lot of victories. The model is 12-4 on Purdue over edges. It will lose one day. Again, there is no lock. There is no right? We always talk about don't put 20% of your bankroll in one game, right? That's not good bankroll management. But with that said, I don't see any reason to stop riding this train. Purdue plays fast. They have a great offense, and they have stretches where they forget how to play defensively. Michigan had a little bit more of a lower scoring game on the road against Penn State earlier in the week, but that's kind of an aberration. They don't tend to want to play that slow. They tend to not play those types of games. So if you're thinking that Michigan's all of a sudden going to play this grinded out game just because of the last thing you saw against Penn State, I think you're misleading yourself. This game to me is a 77-73 type game. I think it easily gets to 150 points. Purdue obviously should win. The only question is, do they win by more than 3.5? So, Jake, that is my question for you.
Yeah, I really like this Purdue team. I went against a better judgment and took Illinois in the last game, and they really made me pay for it. But
Yep.
They're just so good offensively, and they get you from every angle. You've got a projected top 3 pick now in Jaden Ivey, who's it just can take over a game at will. And you've got the big guys they rotate in with Williams and First and Gillis and Edey. And the way Gillis shoots the ball right now, it's really tough because, like, I don't know who you got. You like, okay, we stop Ivy, then they just throw it inside and kick it back out, and they've got shooters around them. And so it's very tough, especially on a Michigan team that's not very good this year. They've just way underperformed. They started to play a little better, and then they dropped, and then they played better again. But I mean, in the last matchup of this team, it took Hunter Dickinson had to step way out because he disappears against physical big guys. So he was having to step out and hit threes and big time jump shots, and outrun Edey. So I don't think that happens again. And I think Michigan turns the ball over a little too much, and then Purdue is just going to bury them with the way they can shoot, especially if they get shots from like Eric Hunter and Thompson. When those guys are rolling, there's not much anybody can do.
Yeah, and it's not this simple, right? But Michigan turns the ball over against Penn State. Penn State's got the ball, and they're like, "We've got the ball,"
Yeah.
Period. The end. Right? Purdue gets a turnover, and they're like, "How fast can we score?" Right? And so yeah, if they're turning the ball over, it's gonna hurt. It's gonna hurt their chances of winning, covering, and it's gonna help over there. So a lot to like there for the game of the night, which takes us into we'll call this overtime. Right? We got a lot of little things here. I'm going to give out all of the A plays of the day. I'm still gonna give you the A plus play here, but I'm gonna give out all the A plays in case you aren't looking at that sheet, just so we're on record here. The A plays are starting to do well again, so I want to highlight all of them. Got 4 A plays. The first one, 7 p.m. Eastern, 6 p.m. Central. Merrimack -5.5 versus Central Connecticut State. I like them to win by 7-8, something in that range. At 8 o'clock Eastern, 7 Central, I've got St. Thomas -7 versus North Dakota. So 2 favorites there that I'm writing. And then I'm writing a dog here at the 8 p.m. Central slot. Dixie State +10.5 versus New Mexico State. The model is 2-0 on A or B picks of Dixie State, so I like that one to stay. Again, I kind of like all 3 of those games to be about 8-point games, right? Merrimack able to cover 5.5, St. Thomas able to cover the 7, and Dixie State able to cover +10.5. And the A plus play of the day, the line that makes no sense to me whatsoever, 6 p.m. Central, Coastal Carolina was a pick'em against Georgia State. Georgia State, a little bit better of a team, but not by much. I mean, this should be Coastal Carolina -2.5, -3 is where this number should be. So pick'em absolutely blows my mind. Another thing to note that Georgia State's actually underperformed my number by about 5 points per game, which is a really large number. Jake and I were talking about this pre-show. The largest team to underperform my numbers, IUPUI. I mean, they're so bad they're looking for walk-on tryouts or tweeting about it, right?
I was about to say that's only going to get worse because they're just going to start bringing in frat guys.
Yeah, but my numbers are updating throughout the year, so it's hard to consistently underperform. IUPUI has underperformed by 7.5 points, which is just a mind-blowing number. But Georgia State by 5 is also really large. Now, again, my numbers are updating, so I don't think that Georgia State will underperform again by 5 points. But it's just saying the numbers moving the wrong direction for them with regards to how well they're playing this year. So Coastal Carolina, A plus play of the day there. We're 6 into a segment. If you watched our college football shows there in the fall, we had a fun Talk Me Out of Clemson segment. We always talked about Clemson every week. If you follow college football, they were kind of disappointing up and down. And somebody was kind of always on them, and that kind of became a running gimmick. So I'm going to bring that back here. We're going to try a daily Talk Me Out of segment. And of course, we're going to kick it off today with the same thing Talk Me Out of Clemson. Jake, I've got a B pick on Clemson plus 7.5. The model thinks it should be Duke minus 5.5. Now, here's where I'm a little nervous. All right, here's where I'm a little nervous. The model is 0-5 on A or B fades of Dukes. The model has not done well going against Duke, but the numbers for Duke, the players individually, the team as a whole, really took a hit after that Monday performance against Virginia. I still think Duke wins, but I like all of those points. Jake, talk me out of Clemson and all those points.
Like there's no way AJ Griffin has back-to-back terrible games, right? Like the way he's playing right now, he scored 2 points, I think, in the last game was 1 of 7. I don't think that happens again. And if Coach K hasn't taken a bat to his team for allowing Paulo to have one shot in the second half, then he needs to retire because that's unacceptable. You've got a probably the number 1 draft pick going, and he gets one shot in the second half and you lose by 1. That's the difference. And Duke, just from a stats wise, right? They're 4-2 as a road favorite, so they travel well. They don't turn the ball over, and they play good defense. So I think that's why I think this gets up to 10-15 range because they're going to come out angry. They're no longer asleep after that huge North Carolina win. Virginia woke them up, and I feel sorry for Clemson.
All right, drop a comment. Let us know if you are sticking with the process, taking all the points with Clemson, or if Jake talked you out of Clemson. And then we're going to wrap up with our usual buzzer beaters here. I've got the best B-side, 7 p.m. Eastern, 6 p.m. Central. Virginia Military, -4. The model is 6-1 on A or B picks of VMI. They've been featured in this segment as the best B-side before. Got us to W. I like them to win by at least 4 tonight. Every dog has its day. Texas A&M Corpus Christi at 7 p.m. Central is plus 135 right now on the money line. That's a B pick. I like them to get the outright win as a road dog. I've enjoyed backing this New Orleans team. They've been mostly a profitable team, but interestingly enough, they have underperformed my numbers this season. Texas A&M Corpus Christi has overperformed them. I think Texas A&M Corpus Christi can go out there and get us the W tonight. I like the plus odds in what's a coin toss type game, so you're getting a lot of value. Plug your nose and play them anyway. I've got at 9 p.m. Eastern, 8 p.m. Central, Portland State plus 10.5 as a B pick at Montana State. We got the win last time out in this segment with Portland. Now I'm going with their neighbors, Portland State. I think both Portland and Portland State have been relatively underrated this year. Neither one are very good, but neither one are quite as bad as the numbers have indicated. And so it's a lot of points there. I'll take all 10.5 of them with Portland State. And I've got, again, we'll call it a late afternoon tonight. I've got double overs for you. There are 2 games, 5 p.m. Eastern, 4 p.m. Central. I like the over on both. Both are TV. Flip back and forth and just root for points galore. I'm taking the over in Mount St. Mary's Wagner. It's 125, and I'm taking the over in William and Mary. That number is 138. I think points galore in these 4 p.m. Central kind of late afternoon delight games. Like I said, flip back and forth, just root for points. Jake, what do you got for us on your buzzer beaters?
I am riding the South Alabama team. They need this for conference standings, and Little Rock is bad. So I think they cover the 15.5. And then I really like this Ohio team. I think they're mad about what happened to them with Toledo because I dropped them down and kind of iced them down in the second because now they've lost both to Toledo. So I think they're going to come out angry and really work this rough Central Michigan team. And then Appalachian State needs this to stay on top because Troy and Arkansas, second and third place, are only a game and a half back. And so I think Appalachian State has to have this. They're playing a not terrible team, but they're playing a worse team in their conference that are going to. And I think they cover the 6.5, 7 points they need to stay in first and kind of keep that going.
Alrighty, that is all we have for you today. Thanks again for tuning in to another episode of Picks with the Professor. Remember, check out that Google Sheet for all picks and totals on today's games. Even until you click subscribe, we'll get you a new episode every weekday of the college basketball season. I mentioned this on Twitter. We're going to have a third man tomorrow. We're bringing on Cousin Jared from the College Football Podcast, so that'll be a lot of fun. Tomorrow's show. And then Saturday, we've got that live chat. So we're going to go through a few games and then open up the chat, talk about whatever games you want. So join us there. Make sure you're subscribed. That'll get you into the chat so that you can ask about games. We'll just shoot from the hip and tell you how we feel about them. We'll see you tomorrow morning. Until then, remember, you can eat your betting money. Please don't bet your eating money.